nice feel, it's a nice welcoming feel.
What is great about Cressingham Gardens is
friendly neighbours, a real sense of community.
Everyone helps everyone out.
we know our neighbours really well.
It's friendly, it's low crime.
It's quite quiet as well. That's a good thing for my grandma.
It's very green, well lit alleyways.
It's a pretty safe place to live.
I've never felt threatened here.
Because the buildings are fairly low-rise, there's lots of natural light.
The windows are very big.
So there's actually brick walls between the homes. You don't even hear your neighbours.
We've got Rockwell Park on our doorstep.
Rooms are really interesting shapes.
Not only is it beautiful inside, but it's also beautiful outside.
Plus it came with a really lovely garden, front and back. It's like as if it's one tightly knit community, as in a small village. But everyone gets on in this village.
And we love it. Really happy here.
The architect, Ted Hollamby, whose vision this estate was, he was passionate about bringing equality of living to people living in social housing.
I think Ted Hollamby is a really interesting figure. I mean, he starts off at the London County Council at a point when that was absolutely the most, glamorous and fashionable and worthy place to work if you were an architect. It was absolutely where the best architects wanted to be because they really did feel they were building a new and better country. I think he was just endlessly inventive. The architecture is the sort of background architecture that's about making lovely places to be. His architecture is incredibly human-centred and gentle and beautifully detailed and really quite traditional in its use of brick and repetitive detailing. I think they're great. They're not great big statement architects. It's absolutely the opposite of the gherkin. It's good, sensible housing in the way that housing should be built.
The types of personalities involved in the design and construction were some of the biggest names in London at that time. So not only was there Ted Hollamby, one of the biggest names in terms of the pioneering architecture, he also worked with Ted Happold, one of the biggest structural engineers who became quite famous. The housing committee that was involved in approving this had John Major, future Prime Minister, as its deputy chair, and then subsequently was Ken Livingstone. The Housing Committee in full council approved the project in January 1969. It went out to tender, and in 1971 they appointed Carlton contractors to basically go and build the estate. However, after 1 year, these contractors were already 26 weeks late. They were then hit by the national building strike, and then they basically walked off the job. The council was then put in a situation as to what to do with this estate, then decided that they were going to build it themselves. So this is one of the last direct labour projects ever done by Lambeth.
The first time we walked in, when we came to view it, even though it was in very bad condition, we knew straight away. The light just made you feel like you wanted to live here.
We lived here about 35 years. The first side of the estate hadn't been built yet. First I saw location, because it's right by the park. And then I came into the house and I thought, wow, this is a decent sized place.
I love the ways the kitchen is raised above a living area that so when you're in the kitchen cooking, you're aware of what people are doing in the rest of the house. You're not all on top of one another, but you've got a sense of family life going on around you. It's not all separated off into little tiny cubicles. And I think that was a very modern way of organising family housing at that time.
The way the house is heated by this warm air system, they're very space saving, so you don't have the sort of trouble of having to arrange your furniture around a radiator. They're quite unusual, I think, very much of the time.
Back in the 1960s, this was now known as a period when they did the massive slum clearances, and they were trying to build new social housing, new homes for the people. This is what the architects were trying to do on Cressingham Gardens. And when you speak to these architects, such as Roger Bicknell, who's still alive today, he will tell you the thought process that went through it. And the idea with this estate, there's housing for every part of your life. There's housing for the elderly, there's housing for the disabled, but also for the families. So the idea is you move around the estate as you progress through your life.
We've lived here 7 years. And we started off, I lived here on my own, but now I've had my family here and I've got my son and my daughter, and it's a great place to live.
Since I've been up here for 3 years, I've successfully
fostered 5 dogs who have then gone on to be rehomed and found their forever homes. So that's 5 dogs that have been saved from being destroyed. If I didn't have the park and all the wonderful facilities that this estate offers, I wouldn't be able to do the dog fostering.
On this side is the patio houses. So this was a design that Ted Hollamby really coined and made it his own. Around the outside of the estate is 1-bedroom flat. On top there's a 3-bedroom maisonettes. So you will see from here that everything's very, very staggered. This way that everyone has maximum views of the park or of green space, and no one's properly overlooking the other. The high-rise portion of the estate then is right around the outside. So it forms a sort of a barrier to the estate and to the outer world, creating a very tranquil, very safe environment inside the estate.
It has an absolutely beautiful location right on the edge of Brockwell Park, and it's been designed so that it doesn't dominate the park. You don't feel that you've got a huge housing estate right on the edge of the park when you're in the park. And from all around within the estate, you get kind of very beautiful views through the buildings and into the park. So you feel, that there's a huge amount of space around you.
There's lots of nice views everywhere you look. It has got this very village-like atmosphere because of the way it's built, with the doors looking onto other people's doors, but in quite small blocks, so it doesn't feel too much either. And the fact that it's full of light, and it's very generous proportions with lots of space for everybody. It feels like this helps to keep down the temperature in terms of we don't have much crime here. And I think that's because people have quite a lot of personal space here.
Well, there's a lot of series of steps here. So when the architects were looking at how to plan, their first question was, how do people live their lives? So if they came home with their shopping, how many steps do you have to go up to get to your kitchen? So you have nice little breaks along the way, and the kitchen is always located on the lowest level of your flat. One of the few estates where the front doors actually face each other. So this creates quite a community feel where people are coming out meeting each other on a regular basis. Many of the other estates were designed on a very formal basis, but the front doors looked onto the back gardens, so it made for a much more colder feeling to it. Also, you find that on the lowest levels and facing the walk is always the kitchens. So the idea was the mother or the housewife who's staying at home can actually engage with the community rather than being isolated at the back of the house.
The flats and houses all relate to one another is very much trying to replicate the patterns of traditional housing in a traditional village. You can catch a glimpse of your neighbour hanging out there washing, or when you walk your dog you'll run into somebody.
And the idea that everyone has access either to communal areas, green areas, their own patio gardens, or even up to the upper levels is the actual planters. So at every level of the estate there is greenery in nature.
I love growing things, and I've been trying my hand at growing my own organic vegetables. Most of the year round I can now supply my own organic veg and also kitchen herbs. I've never been able to do this anywhere else before until I moved here.
People's patio gardens become very, very creative zones. For example, there are artists with the mannequins with the ivy growing as dresses. On the estate there's a big movement for green and sustainability. In addition to the edible gardens, they do a lot of own composting here. They've got the free composting tumbler.
As far as I know, it's only the second one in the whole of London.
Light was very important in Hollamby's design. How to bring in maximum amount of light into the homes.
These 2-bedroom masonette homes are split over 3 levels, and it is amazing use of design, but most importantly is the light coming into the homes. In the stairwells you've got the dual sloping roofs which have the vertical skylights. When you go into the kitchen you will see there's skylights just over the preparation area, bringing in natural light all the way.
Every flat and every home has ceiling to floor windows. Maximum light comes into where you're actually living.
The rooms in the flats and houses are all decent sizes and have lovely wide windows and a light and well planned, and yet the whole fits together. It's a very kind of complicated jigsaw. It all comes together very well as well.
One of the features in all the 1-bedroom flats on this estate is this angular wall. And what it does, it makes the rooms feel larger than they would all normally be if it was just a straight wall down. So in this case, the lounge room is that much wider. It then shrinks to a much narrower one, but it gives a lot more space then for the bedroom.
Hollamby's an interesting figure because he becomes incredibly interested in William Morris, who was leading figure of the arts and crafts movement. And Hollamby went to live in Morris's Red House in South London, and I think was criticised for sort of not living in the type of house that he was building. But I don't think he would have seen it like that. I think he would have seen his houses as replicating kind of the best qualities of arts and crafts housing in terms of, making special places to sit, making sure that, the height of a windowsill worked well if you were going to be sitting in an armchair reading, or making sure that you had put a little extra window in so you get a little view out where you perhaps least expect it. I think working on a really tight budget, he is trying to bring some of those arts and crafts ideals into public housing.
On the walls in here, the wallpaper was peeling. On closer inspection, if you just peel back some of the layers that had been added over the years, you could see something very much resembling this. I thought, I wonder if I'd be able to find something at least similar, evoking an era. And I found a German website, and I found the thumbnail of virtually the exact same wallpaper that I'd been looking for. But literally, on the day, which was about 9 years after we moved in, that we finished everything, which was the spare room and the toilet. That week I bumped into chap Nick, who's now our co-chair of the Residents Association, outside my house. He was just about to knock on my door, but I was just arriving back from work. He handed me a flyer. Do you know the council want to knock down your home? Which obviously kind of put a bit of a, you can imagine, a dampener on the joy of having just completed the decade-long refurbishment.
It was very quick to get to know my neighbours up here, partly because I'd only been here 6 months and then discovered about this regeneration project. I was very shocked when I found out that there was very real plans to demolish the whole estate as it was then, because I just thought it was such a lovely estate. I've lived on other estates in Lambeth that have been quite high crime. You feel very hemmed in. It's a concrete jungle, and this is like a village type atmosphere in the way it's laid out. It's so green. People seem so happy up here. It seemed like a kind of jewel in Lambeth's crown of estates. So it seemed crazy to me that you would want to demolish something that's obviously working very successfully at some levels, but true, at another level there are a lot of repairs that need doing up here, and there are a lot of properties where people are living in quite poor conditions.
It's much easier to do repairs, and it's cheaper to do repairs.
The estate was designed when Parker Morris standards were in force, so all the homes were designed on certain minimum space, but also in terms of storage areas.
I've got 4 bedrooms here, 2 toilets, a back garden with a shed. If everyone can escape to, their own sanctuaries, they all come together because it's a large enough sitting room, can eat together, it's a decent sized kitchen.
I love my flat. I will never get a flat like this ever again, and it's because of the shell and certain features to Hollamby built into the flat, so the sloping ceilings, natural light coming in. I love the location next to the park, and I think one of the biggest bonuses, which I didn't know until I actually moved on to the estate, was the amazing community. When I first moved on, I used to get these little community newsletters telling me how to use vinegar to clean and everything else. It was really a village within the city.
I think this, the overall creation of a community, the grouping of the buildings around the village green area and the streets, the way that it encourages you to kind of bump into your neighbours and say hello.
What you can see here is what we call our little woodlands. So this is one of our small green spaces. But one of the interesting things is we have a lot of these small green spaces between the blocks, and this helps to buffer the sound. This is one of the ways. There's no undercover garage, it's literally on the ground. And you'll see here mixed types of housing again. So on one side we have the 1-bedroom flats, and then on the other side we have the 4-bedroom homes. So what we find here is quite a mixing of the community. This little square is what the locals we call Teletubby Land, and it's actually part of the Brockwell Park Conservation Area. Interestingly, if you go into the park itself, into what we call the meadows, and you look back at the estate, you will see that the estate actually sits below the tree line. When they designed the original estate, they left all the trees in place. Only one tree was ever removed, which was a willow tree that had been sick. And then the design actually fitted around the trees that were there, because it was originally these old Victorian mansions located on here. Looking at the brickwork on Cressingham Gardens, all the grouting is raked. And this was a very, very particular feature that the architects wanted. They wanted this type of look and feel. Today, they will tend to do the grouting straight on flush with the bricks. The rotunda is a round building. And the story that's told is the local bricklayers didn't think that you could lay in a circular fashion. But Ted Hollamby had amongst his workers a master bricklayer, and he came out and proved them wrong. The rotunda was originally designed as a nursery or for a playgroup. The original design and inspiration for the rotunda was a circus tent or merry-go-round.
The way the nursery school is built kind of exaggerates the slope of the land, I think, and makes you feel that you've got a more exciting topography than you actually have. I think it's very clever in that way.
The original design was Ted Hollamby, who wanted this circular building, and then Roger Bicknell put the detailed design around it, and he personally went out to the Isle of Dogs to choose the big wooden beams that you see here today. These are the original style doors, and also you see right next to the doors is the old, I believe they're the old gas meters still implanted into the wall. They wanted a very flush look with the walls, they didn't want gutters overhanging. It does make for a very, very complicated build. We've got our famous 6 void flats. They've been vacant for over 16 years, according to residents. It's quite a disgrace because even by council estimates, they say that it should only cost £260,000 to fix and refurbish, but still they're still vacant.
The other estates of this period that are listed include the houses by Neve Brown in the London Borough of Camden, which have a lot of the same qualities as Hollamby's work, but they're all built in exposed concrete. And so I think they look a lot more modern and a lot more architectural. They're kind of what people expect from post-war architecture. And what I like about Hollamby's is that he's taking a lot of those ideas, but he's doing it in a really, really modest vocabulary of concrete lintels and brick. And I think it helps the buildings to integrate with the housing around them. It's just doing good architecture with modest means in a really skillful way. I think the thing that's most unusual about this estate is its absolutely fabulous setting, and it really does make the most of being, you know, at the top of the hill and looking down across the park. I think that's probably why it's threatened, that it's a very obvious site for a developer to think they could do an attractive and very sellable new housing scheme. But I think it'd be an enormous pity to lose the Cressingham Gardens as it stands. I think it's a great bit of architecture.
Very quickly sunk in that this was going to be the new phase in my life, basically. This was life kind of ends and then begins in a new way from that then on. You're forever changed when you hear something like that about your home.
What I'd lose is, apart from the home, apart from where I am, is the community. And you can never replace the community. You know, I don't know, it'd be strange to me. It'd be like me moving to Wiltshire or Scotland somewhere and having to start all over again. And I don't want that. 35 years of building up this relationship, you know, especially with some of the neighbours here which have been here equally as long, you know, you can't win that back. You know, repairs, not regen.
When I heard that the estate was under threat, I thought, right, I'll go down to the Lambeth archives and find out if I can find out the history to the estate, who did design it. And sure enough, when I got down to the archives, I found out that Ted Hollamby, Lambeth's leading architect during the 70s, had designed this estate.
We've been very supportive of the listing application, and we very much hope that its architectural interest will be recognised and that it will be restored. I think it works really well as an example of high density, low-rise housing, and it's just very beautifully designed.